Okay, I think we're recording. All right, so welcome everybody for, I think this is the 10th session, or maybe the 7th hands-on session for the Data Cloud Bootcamp. We've got Matt Brule joining today to help build us out. We're going to be building a calculated insight, part of our effort to create a data action to drive actions into Marketing Cloud. And we'll get started. So let me share my screen. I just want to set the, well, actually, we'll have Matt introduce himself, give a little bit of a background before we get started, and I'll set the context and pass it over to Matt for the build.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. My name is Matt Brule. I'm based out of Exeter, New Hampshire. I'm a Marketing Cloud administrator. I've been in Marketing Cloud for just under a decade at this point, but have almost no experience with Data Cloud. So really appreciate these sessions and the hands-on training. So I think we'll get a good look at how somebody with no training can really do building one of these sessions. So I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining, Matt. And it's excellent to have someone with your 10 years of experience in Marketing Cloud. Amazing. This build does include Marketing Cloud. We may get to that today, we may not, but we'll definitely leverage your expertise. So let me just share my screen and talk about what, I want to set the context for where we are today. Just to go back over the use case. So we're, in this use case, Cervelo Bank, fictitious company, has launched this mobile app. They've noticed that signups and usage of the platform is a lot lower than they expected. And they want to use Data Cloud to pull in their data to market via Marketing Cloud because there are limitations to how they can communicate in the app itself. A couple of sessions ago, we worked on a segment for the no bank link. Today's segment is going to be that group that have signed up to be traders on the app, which means they've deposited money into their bank account. And now the next bottleneck is getting them to make that first trade. So we want to identify that segment of those people who've deposited money into their bank account and to communicate them in the Marketing Cloud. So that's the segment we're focusing on today, segment 2. And then just to give a perspective on what we're going to be building today, this is the lower half of this graph where we're going to be building a data action. To do that, we're going to start by having Matt build a calculated insight. What that will do is set the values that are going to be in the data extension in the API entry event in Marketing Cloud. So we sort of have to do the cart before the horse on this, or the horse before the cart, not you say that. On this end, you can't really go and fill this all out on the Data Cloud side and activate it until you've aligned the data points in Marketing Cloud. So we're going to start by building that calculated insight, get those data points. Then we're going to go into Marketing Cloud, build the API event journey with building that data extension with those calculated insight values. Then we're going to come back into Data Cloud to build the data action target and data action to complete the process. So I think today, depending on how much time we have, we'll probably should be able to complete the calculated insight. We'll see how it goes because it can be a little complex. One other area I wanted to talk about, and I was trying to attach this in the chat. And Matt, can you do me a favor? Can you take a screen capture of this schema? We're going to be using this schema when we build the calculated insight. I apologize. I wanted to attach this in the chat so everyone could refer to it. And others, if you want to just take a screen capture of this as well. What this is the, I think if you had attended the session on the modeling in Data Cloud, whether that was in the fundamentals part or Michelle Medina's walkthrough, as you know, the data model in Data Cloud includes these, standardized tables. There's 3 groupings of them. 2 of those groupings we're going to use today for this calculated insight. The most important one is this unified individual. So that's has all those data points that we're going to be using. So in our calculated insights, we're going to be pulling the first name, the bank name, and the deposit amount. You can see these green tracks here. This is going to be pulled into that data extension. And then we're doing a sort of a waterfall link to get down to these couple of key points that we all need for Marketing Cloud, which is that subscriber key. We're going to be pulling from this contact point email ID, and then the email address, same contact point email table for both of these. One is the bridge, another one is derived. So we're going to be building visually in the calculated insights our query and joining all three of these tables in order to get a subscriber key and to get that email address from that unified profile. So we're referring back to these documents or this schema often. Okay, so that's the background, and I'm going to stop sharing. And Matt, we're going to have you share your screen and go right into Data Cloud.
Lester, right when you stop sharing.
Okay, is it not giving you the ability to share?
Oh, would you like me to share my screen?
Sure. Do you have the ability to do that?
I should, just a moment.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so before we dive into building those calculated insights, we wanted to visualize this schema in Data Cloud, how we are going to identify those data points that we looked at in that schema. So to do that, Matt, we're going to have you click on the Data Explorer tab. Right there. And then we're going to, this is how you can see the data of all your data lake objects, the DMOs, calculated insights, etc. So in that object, look down, if you click on that, if you click on data model object, okay, and then in the dropdown, we're going to want to, if you click on that, if you want to scroll down, we're going to look for the contact point email. Should be near the bottom. There are quite a few here, and the UI is a little bit hard. Okay, so let's see. So if you actually go back, it's very specific actually. So there's quite a few actually contact point email. So if you scroll down, so let's see. Yeah, contact. If you go down a little further, keep going. Okay, unified contact point email. Let's start off with derived. Yeah, let's click on that one. Okay, and then I want you to duplicate this browser tab. We're going to have two different Data Explorer DMOs that we're going to look and compare. And so I think you've got the derived DMO on that. And then we're going to want to get the bridge. So in your second browser tab, we're going to go to the DMOs. And I think the bridge was around that same like bottom part, but it might have been a little bit lower down. Let's see, contact point. Yeah, perfect. Excellent. Okay. So we're not going to go through all four tables of this schema, but we're going to go through the bottom two just because, just to show how you can dig in and understand the data relationship in Data Cloud. So as you can see in that schema, and you can see that on that first column, contact point email ID. And as we were referring in our last session or two, we see that 003 number, which is that contact ID, right? That is that subscriber key that we want to pull into Marketing Cloud. So that's that value that we're going to pull over into that data extension. So that's looking really good. You can see also from this this DMO, there's no email address. Like, why isn't there an email address? That's why we have to use the other contact point email to get the email address. And how do we link those two together? So if you go over to your other tab, which was I think that was the derived, you can see on the left email address, right? So there's those two different tables. We've got email address in one, we've got subscriber key, that contact ID in other. Neither of those fields exist in either one of these tables. So how do we determine how to join these two together? So obviously you can see in the schema that unified contact point email ID is the one. It looks, you go back and forth, they sort of look similar. But to really determine that, an exact way, and it's kind of hard in Data Cloud. You can't, I think you might be able to export these, but I think this only shows you the first 50 records. So it's really hard to visualize to confirm that. So what we've done is if you click on the top of that column, unified contact point email ID, yeah, and then if you click on it, it'll sort it, and then click on it again, it'll sort it, yeah, that way. Now go back to your other tab and do the same thing. Yeah, okay, good. So let's take a look at that first row. It begins with FFA96EOCA. And then let's go over to the other tab. Right, so there's that match, right? That's that same record. That's how we get the glue that connects with the the two tables, so that we can get the we're linking to the individual link, unified individual link, to get to this subscriber key, and that's the path of how we're going to link from this table to the derived to get the email address. Obviously, when you're going to be setting up your data model, you will have this information, you'll have this relationship. But if you're a marketer and you're coming in and you're working through this and just trying to understand the data, this might have been a helpful way to sort of look in the back end and be like, all right, I know I have to get these certain values. How do I get there? And just wanted to see, everyone have visualization of how you can sort of see that in Data Cloud. Okay, that's just wanted to walk through that. Any questions on how those two tables are going to work together and sort of how that schema is coming together? Okay. So Matt, now we're going to go and we're going to create our calculated insight. So we'll go into the calculated insight tab. And if you just click on the, yep. And then we'll click over on the new tab over there on the right. So you have a lot of options here to create different types of different ways of creating calculated insight. SQL, obviously, if you're familiar with SQL in Marketing Cloud, that might be a good path. But today we're just going to go through the Builder UI. We'll see the SQL at the end, but I think it's just a good way to start. We'll start with the create with the Builder. And we're going to be building a calculated insight, so we'll go with that. And then we'll click on that select an object blue button. Okay, so we need to start with our first data set that we're looking to, basically this is going to be creating our query visually. So we want to look down, scroll down to the unified individual. Yep, it's right. It's the second one a little further up. It's just unified individual by itself. Yep. And then when you click on that, you can see over there on the right all of the fields. This is a good way to validate, hey, do I have the right DMO here? And obviously you can go back into the Explorer, and when you're creating your schema, if you go that back way and you go to every one of these tables, you'll know you've picked up unified individual because these are the values that are familiar to what you're used to. And these look like the ones this is a good match. So we'll hit next. All right, and this is our canvas. We're basically creating a query visually, which is kind of cool interface. So let's hit that plus sign. And we're going to do a join. This is where we're going to be joining another data extension. Okay, and so in the next schema item, we're looking for unified link individual, which I think is below unified. See, there it is right there, perfect. And again, those look like the fields we're used to that we've seen in our schema build. We can hit next. Now, one of the limitations of this schema builder or this query builder in Data Cloud is that you can only join to the original data extension. So we can't do a join into our next data extension to unified link individual. So for all of these joins, we're going to do a right join. If you want to click on right join in that box, that'll be our process. And then you can see here, because the unified individual ID, which is that first linkage in our schema, naturally exists in both of these DMOs, that it automatically makes that pairing. So it's kind of friendly there. And it also adds an API name prefix down there at the bottom as well. You can sort of see that unified link individual dot unified record underscore C added there. So yeah, so that's pretty easy. So we'll hit apply there in the bottom, and we've got our first join. So now we're going to go add another plus to the right of that join. We're going to add another join. And this one, we're going to find the unified link contact point email bridge. And that, yep, there you go. Perfect. Yep. And we're going to hit next. Those look right, the right values. So you can see now that join gets joined to that first data extension. There's no plus sign after unified link individual, which would be kind of nice. You know, if you're familiar, if you're using a lot of queries in Marketing Cloud, you're used to creating those joins, not necessarily to your original data extension, but maybe to the second one or the third one. So this one, we're going to use that right join again down there at the bottom. And then we're going to need to make the linkage here. It doesn't naturally happen. Again, we're going to be using linkage of two values that aren't the same. So if we hit the plus sign down there, yep. And then on the left, now that you've joined the first two tables, all of those tables will be available. So we're going to be looking for individual ID in this list. Yep, awesome. That helped by typing in those words. That was great. We'll go with that. And then on the right, we're going to look for the contact point email ID. So if we, yeah, it should be that first one right there, contact point email ID. Perfect. And then we're going to need to add a prefix. Yeah, we can hit apply there. And then down at the bottom, we're going to need to add a prefix. If you scroll down just a hair, in that API name prefix for right columns, let's type in, we could call this bridge, since it's linking the individual to, yep, and let's hit apply. Oh, and then also, I don't know why this happens, but yeah, let's delete that. I don't know why, because that gets added, that naturally gets added there, but thank you. Fantastic. All right, so now that we've created these two, let's save this calculated insight. Yeah, let's hit save as draft, just because sometimes the UI can time out. And yeah, so let's name this, I guess we could name it bootcamp underscore first deposit. Perfect. And then in the description, you can just write segment of first deposit subscribers, something like that. Perfect. And we can hit save. And this will bring you back out to the calculated insight you just created. And then we're going to go into the edit of that in the upper right-hand corner and go right back into that calculated insight. Cool. All right, we've got one more join. We're rolling pretty quickly here. Nice work, Matt. And then we want to add in that derived table, contact point, email derived. Yep, a little further up. Yep, right there in the derived section. Yep, perfect. Awesome. Good point, Lakshmi, to use the search button. That's a good idea. We'll I think we're done adding. I think, but that's a good point. Well, I think Matt was using that when he was looking for those values. So that's a great call. Thank you. Great suggestion. Okay, so we can see. Yep, we'll do the right join on this one as well. Thank you. And just like with the first join, these unified contact point IDs are the same in both data extensions, so that just naturally applies. So that all looks good. We can hit apply. Cool. All right, we've set up essentially our from statement in the SQL query. Now we need to add on to our select statement in the query. So if we hit that plus sign, we're going to do an aggregate. And for calculated insights, this measures is required. So we're not really going to use this, but we need to add it just because it's required. So let's hit the plus sign. For this use case, we've been using the count. So, we could account the number of deposits. So if you scroll down a little bit there, we'll click on deposit amount. Yep. And then we'll hit next. Now, this is going to be setting that data value, which we're going to be using in our data extensions for the API event. So you just want to be mindful of how you're naming these. So you could just call this deposit count. That, and then we hit apply. I think that should sort of save that work. And now we're going to add the dimensions, which are the data extension values, the payload essentially that we're going to be using. So we'll click on that plus sign. And then the first value we're going to look for is to set the subscriber key. And that is in that schema. So that subscriber key is that contact point email ID. Yep. Let's click on that. Perfect. And hit next. And you could call this subscriber key. For us Marketing Cloud aficionados, we love that word. Make it simple. We're going to add another value, which is we need that email address. And that's kind of funny with the UI, how it just sort of switched down there. So let's see, let's try that again. That was so weird. That's happened to me too. Okay, so the email address is email address. That's easy. Nice. And Matt, like how you're naturally naming these without spaces, again, that's preferred best practices on Marketing Cloud side, so excellent. Well done. And hit apply. All right, we're gonna fill out some more information. Let's add in first name, and we're gonna be using these points for our personalization. All right, and then we'll add in bank name. Ooh. We'll add in deposit amount. We'll add in account number. I think that'll do it. Let's hit apply. And let's hit save as draft, just because that's a lot of detailed work there. We don't want to replicate. Awesome. And we'll go back and edit this one more time. We want to add in a filter for this specific segment. Yep. And then with the plus sign. So we want the segment where the deposit amount is greater than 0. Yeah, we'll hit next. Oh. Perfect. And we'll hit apply. Okay, there's our calculated insight. Nicely done, Matt. So let's hit save and run. And let's hit next. So what we're going to do is we're not going to schedule this. We're going to hit enable on this, and it's going to populate the values that we need to create our data extension on the Marketing Cloud side. And then once that's all set up, then we are going to schedule and publish the calculated insight, and that will kick off our process of populating that into Marketing Cloud. All right, so let's go to the expression tab, just to the right of that details tab in CRM. So in your calculated insight, in the main screen, you're on the details tab underneath your Bootcamp first deposit. So a little bit lower down, yep, and let's hit expression. So there's the query we just created. It's kind of hard to read. I typically will just bring this into a notepad and sort of format it like I typically like to have those queries. Just sort of digging into understanding the difference between the query capabilities in Marketing Cloud versus Data Cloud. Sort of see some differences like the group by is typically will have, well, it looks like it's grouping by all those characters. That's why there's probably not a max in the select. But anyways, if you're comfortable with SQL, you might want to play around with, instead of using the tool we just used, using SQL itself. It's kind of handy that they provide it to you here as well. So it's kind of a cool tool. And then in the output tab to the right, These are the data values that you just created, in that select statement. And this is the payload that's going to be sent to Marketing Cloud in the data extension for that API event. So what we're going to want to do, just to make this easier for us as we create the data extension in Marketing Cloud, I typically will create this in a notepad. So Matt, if you want to open up a basic notepad, perfect. The syntax for how this works is that you see that calculated insights object API name bootcamp underscore first deposit underscore CIO. Yep. That's the beginning. It's going to be the beginning of every single data extension field. So if you copy that over into your notepad, yeah, and then if you want to, you can, replicate that 7 times, because we're going to basically, yeah. And then for every single one of these values, you're going to add an underscore after the CIO, and then you're going to paste in, for account number, it'd be account number underscore underscore C. Yeah, sorry, I should have had that underscore before. Yeah, so if you want to go ahead and do that, then I'm going to modify your access in the Marketing Cloud environment so that we can create that data extension for the API event. I kind of find it helpful to do it that way versus just copying pasting, just because, well, that was really quick. All right, let me just say that it's going to give you access to the business units. Let me just modify your access in Marketing Cloud. Any questions from anybody on building the calculated insight? All right. Almost done here. Matt, if you want to pull up Marketing Cloud, we're going to be going in there and we're going to be creating a data extension to start the build of our API entry event. And I'm just granting you full access here.
Is there any preference in building this in Email Studio versus a Contact Builder?
I like building in Email Studio. I don't know what others. What are your thoughts, Matt? What's your preference?
I usually prefer to build in Email Studio as well. I'll do some stuff in Contact Builder, like editing mostly, if I need to go and find an individual record or something. But yeah, I think from the ground up, I'm in Email Studio already more. So
awesome. And then we're going to want we'll go with your recommendation. And then if we can modify the business units, I think I've given you access to all of our business units. If you actually refresh your screen, maybe it'll. Yeah, there we go. So Cervelo Partner Main, the one we'll want to go into. Yeah, that's the one that's connected to the Data Cloud environment. And then we do have a folder for this work. So if you click under, yep, then under that hands-on folder, we've got a Data Cloud folder. Yep, if you want to build it there. So Matt, this is going to be a standard data extension, and I'd like to actually get your thoughts, taking the team through building a data extension. You'll see back in the calculated insight, you'll see the data values, the types of the data values. So I'm going to sort of let you sort of lead the team on, best practices on creating a date extension. So if you go to the calculated insight in, yeah, you can see two of the values are text and sorry, two of them are number and the rest of them are text. So, I'll let you sort of walk the team through us on building that data extension and then what those, the lengths might be and stuff like that as well.
Sure, happy to take a stab at it. So I think for the data extension name, I'm probably going to try to keep that the same for consistency reasons. So my guess is I want this to be first deposit for my data extension name, just to make sure that if I'm going from one cloud to the next, I'm familiar with what I'm looking for. Description, again, same thing. I'm probably going to try to carry that over from the CRM. So we've got segment of first deposit. And one thing I like to do in my descriptions in Marketing Cloud is just to say where it's populated from. So I think I'm going to say that this is populated by Data Cloud.
Very cool.
Do we want this to be sendable? I know we are bringing over a subscriber key, so are we going to hook this up directly? Awesome. And then is testable. Will we like that for here as well?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. Do you use that field often, Matt? And
I
how do you
don't
use
know. Most of the
it? Same here.
is on the fly anyway, so I usually don't use it. So
Okay, cool.
Awesome. Any needs for data retention policy?
I think we're okay there. Unless, do you have a point of view on, best practices on data retention? Do you, in your
Yeah, so
environment?
one thing that I like to do, especially in financial services, if we are bringing over an account number, and I'm not sure the specifics here, but obviously if there's any account information, I may want to, clean that up fairly frequently so I don't have to think about it. So setting a retention policy for 2 weeks or anything, depending on the business needs, of course. I'm not sure exactly what we're going to be doing here, but I do like to try to set retention settings if I'm bringing over anything potentially sensitive, just to try to make my life easier on cleanup further down the road.
Awesome. Very cool.
So our first field here is going to be account number, and I'm just going to check to make sure I remember which of these are numbers, both the deposit accounts. So an account number, I'm going to guess 50 is going to be okay for our length here. Any insights on that? Awesome.
I think you're right there.
Our first name, I'll probably leave as 50 as well. Our bank name, I'm going to guess 50 is okay, but that might be one that I may bump out to 100 or so just to account for anything particular, spaces, anything like that that's going to be coming over. Email address, I think it's set as a text on the CRM side, but this is going to be a sendable data extension. I'd probably suggest that we use email address here directly to make sure that we've got something good to send to. Subscriber key, I'm going to leave as text. And is this something where we should expect this because we're using that contact ID from Salesforce to be 18 digits every time?
It's a great point, Matt, because in our earlier segment, we had seen when we created a segment, we saw contact IDs. We also saw these GUIDs that came through based on the model. So I think, yeah, having that be maybe 100 might give us a little bit more flexibility because there might be these massive GUIDs coming. We're unsure about our data environment. So to your point, yeah, giving a little bit more.
Great. All right, and deposit count. So this is our first number field. So we could set that as number type. I know sometimes depending on how we're going to be using it, that might be something that I want as a decimal or even possibly text, depending how we're going to be using it. So I'm curious your thoughts on this, Tim, exactly how you think you would be using this moving forward.
Yeah, I'd love to get your thoughts on that. I mean, I typically will add it as a number when I'm doing a calculation, right? And because it won't work, right? If you're doing an AMP script and you're adding and it's a text field, right? It won't take that value. I mean, when you're building data extensions, do you default to text when it comes to a number value, or do you default to number? What's your thought on that?
I think it's exactly what you just mentioned. If I needed to use it in a calculation, or if I need to do any, formatting modification with it, or excuse me, if I need to use a calculation, I want it to be a number. If it's something where I think I may be doing formatting upstream, maybe I'm using a deposit amount, for example, in our next one, and I'm expecting that to come from an external system, I might use that as text just so I know I can display it and I know any manipulation is being done upstream. I think you bring up a good point, just different AMP script functions. Where are we going to do that manipulation? Probably dictates how I try to set it up here for sure. And a lot of times I may take a stab at something, try it out, and then adjust it later and do another run. I find myself doing that more often than not. So.
Okay, we're not the only one who goes back and modifies data extensions 15 times. Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, okay, so I think for this example, and this was that data value, I think it was the count of the, which I think was something that we may not use. So I think to your point, maybe we'll leave that as text, but maybe the deposit, maybe that'll be, yeah, number. We might total that, type of thing. Yeah.
Awesome. And
Cool.
then just a quick question, I guess, on what we expect our data integrity to be. Do any of these need to be nullable? Are we expecting any of these to ever be false coming over from CRM? I'm just curious what the protections are on kind of the data transfers.
Yeah. Yeah, great question. You would think there would be, right? So with Data Cloud, we're pulling this data from 3 different sources. Will we always have first name? Not sure. Will we have that? So I think for most of those values, we're going to probably want them to be nullable, except for maybe subscriber key and email address, because I think we'd want to filter those out. Yeah, and then the primary key, I'm also on the fence there as well. So in this use case, Matt, we're pulling in these values, these segments. Could there be a chance where this subscriber comes in twice, fired in? I'm trying to think if for this API event that we're firing, if there is a subscriber key, will that prevent them to be sent in again? I think it won't. Just prevent them from being added to the data extension. So I'm sort of on the fence on whether that should be a primary key or not. Do you have any thoughts on that as far as when to use primary key and when to not?
Yeah, I think it's exactly like you mentioned. Do we want this message to go in the event that somebody happens to be here twice? And it sounds like we're targeting people to encourage them to make their first deposit. So my gut would be maybe allow them to come in twice. We don't necessarily want to set it as a primary key. Maybe I've got 2 devices or 2 apps, and you've identified me as the same individual, but not necessarily the same situation. So I think that's probably what we'd want to do, is send another message just to encourage that behavior. But obviously that'll be very use case specific.
Amazing. Great perspective. Thank you.
And I'm going to set our subscriber key to our send relationship here. Awesome.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Just the unique characteristics of why that you set that to subscriber key?
Yeah, so we've got our data model set up in Marketing Cloud. That's all based off our subscriber key. That's really going to be our identifier to our unique recipient on the other end of the message. Very important to map that back to whatever your known subscriber is coming in, so you don't create duplicate subscribers on the Marketing Cloud side. Really hard to unwind. It'll create duplicate contacts. Depending on your contract, you may have to manage those, based on how close you are to your contact counts. So always really important whenever you're doing a sendable data extension to make sure that you're really cautious around what you're setting as your subscriber key.
Amazing. Thank you.
All right, does this look good?
Looks great.
Awesome.
What if we need to update any of the records in this data? I think we could have one primary key attribute. That's a good point, Lakshmi, to to update in the data extension, you do need that primary key in Contact Builder. So yeah, I think we're on the fence as we're sort of thinking through this. So yeah, that's definitely a good, you know, good to think about. But excellent. So here's that data extension that's aligned in Data Cloud. And now I think we've got a couple minutes. I think what we can do is create the API event that's going to connect to this data extension that's going to be fed into the journey that gets automatically fired. So Matt, if we go to Journey Builder, I think that's probably the best place to build that API event. For the entry source. Yep. Yeah, and we can create a new one if you want. You've done this before.
And this is probably something I would do just to include our source if we're going to be having things coming from multiple sources. I'm not sure if that's something we'd be doing here or not, but I would probably want to have some sort of indicator here, even if it's just DC, an abbreviation. I find that helpful if we've got events coming in from multiple origination points. Then in the description, you'd probably just try to keep it consistent across the other objects that we've already set up. We'll select our data extension that we just created. And again, I'm noticing here that I don't have Data Cloud here, so that might be something where, again, that consistency may have helped me out had I included that there. I probably would have found it a little bit quicker. Awesome. Any additional filter needs? Anything you think you'd want to add here?
I haven't used that for, have you used that for API event journeys or anything? Yeah.
No, me personally, I always try to do any sort of segmentation like this upstream. Anything coming here is probably a last resort, just in my personal opinion.
Amazing.
Awesome. And then I'm going to save this event definition key to my notepad. I find a lot of times when I'm setting these up, I'm going to need this value somewhere else. So I want to make sure I have that handy. And then I'll hit done.
Amazing. And the last step, Matt, if you can walk us through this as well, we want to just create a basic journey with this API event and just a decision split and activate it, just so that we can pull in the data, right? We're not setting up the email. We just want the data to come in so that we can see it. So could you, I'm trying to put you on the spot here, to create a journey now that you've got that entry event.
Sure.
And awesome.
So I'm going to create a new journey. I'm going to use a multi-step journey here. I'm also going to try to adjust my name first, just so I don't forget to go back and do that later. We use an API event as our entry source. We'll select the one that we just created a moment ago. Okay, we'll use a quick decision split here. So, and this is a lot of times what I'll do is I'll set up a testing gate or something right up front. That's usually the first decision split I like to do when I'm monitoring my data coming through and making sure things are being segmented correctly. I don't think we have a flag for that here, so I might do something like email address is not null or something similar. Any preference on your end, what you'd like me to use here?
Exactly the same. Love it.
Okay, and then I'll just do something like has email. Let's do else down here. Awesome. Okay, so we should set our reentry. So I think we have no primary key set here, so we're anticipating that someone may be able to come through this journey more than once. So again, depending on exactly what we think our messaging needs might be, I'm probably going to set this to reentry anytime at the moment, just since we may be sending 2 different messages to the same person over 2 mobile apps. Our email address we've already set. No mobile number needs here. We didn't bring in phones, so I'll leave that blank and I will set this to done. The only other thing I might do on my end is just shorten up these wait times, especially if I'm going to be testing. So I'll bring this down a little bit. And I think in the most recent release, they now started throwing warnings if these are longer than 3 minutes as the last wait step in the journey. So I will put these.
No way. So 3 minutes gets rid of that warning. That's a good find.
I've run into it once, and when I dropped it to 3 minutes, I still, got the warning, but I'm not sure that I cleaned it up I just ran into that yesterday. So, but seems like they've been doing that.
Cool.
It should be nice. A lot more validation warnings with the most recent release. So.
Awesome.
Automation Studio even started throwing off-peak notifications based on when you're scheduling your automations. I really liked that. So that was good. A nice green circle if you go off the hour mark. So. Awesome.
Yeah, that is handy. Yeah, you can activate this. This is well done, Matt. Amazing. Really cool to see another expert building journeys. And sorry to put you on the spot, but knew you could handle it.
All good.
Obviously, a very comfortable area for you. Excellent. So yeah, so we've aligned that data, and now you can, we're out of time, but then our next session, what we'll do is create the data action target, the data action. We're going to publish this, and then we'll see the data flow into this journey, just so that you can see your data points. And then what we'll do at the very last part is we're going to align those data points to make sure they're all coming through correctly. And then we'll build our email based on the, using attribute value and MScript based on the data. We might use lookup rows into our syncDEs to validate that data as well, and complete the, the goal, which is, it's our 3-part goal. One is to bring in that subscriber that is, the qualified person who needs to be that first deposit or needs their bank linked. Number 2 is to bring in those personalization points. So we're going to bring in like first name, account number, etc. And then the 3rd part is bringing in that data point that might create a custom journey path depending on that data coming in from Data Cloud. So we'll walk that through next time. And Matt, amazing. So great to have you. So cool to get your perspective, and really appreciate your perspective on creating data extensions and journeys. We are doing a Journey Builder Bootcamp coming up in July, so I'm going to be knocking on your door to see maybe if you can come back to even lead a session on that. I know there might be some challenges from having clients sometimes share their information, but knowing your expertise, if maybe we'll want to consider that, would be great. And then we'll meet I think in 2 weeks. We're off next week because of the holiday, and we'll see everybody then.
Awesome. Well, thank you for putting this on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. See everybody.